wizards or someone with the strongest will can order them. Interesting. Proceeding that, Adrish then gets Shinofane to send people to check out the disappearance of Kurov after we inform her of the situation, and then we proceed to move the conversation on to actually talking about the lycanthropes, who seem to be enemies of the Eladrin who share the forest.
They're not necessarily enemies. They sort of coexist but avoid each other to avoid conflicts.
Okay, they try not to fight, but they share the same home. It potentially it did come up that we may have a better chance of finding the cult by seeking the lycanthrope, as they are renowned hunters. So another option available to us during our conversation was the potential to go and investigate the Mithril Hall, which is slightly to the west of Silvery Moon. It appears to have been shut down, and no caravan has traded with Silvery Moon since spring. The dwarves don't love visitors, so it's been hard for the elves to really discern the situation there. But they do really favor trade with barbarians from Icewind Dale, wherever that is. So Shinofane then proceeds to actually inform us that she was visited long ago by High Eladrin, and Emma reminded her of them. These High Eladrin mentioned that the descendants of the betrayer had escaped. They are dangerous and condemned by all elves and elven gods and essentially all good creatures. They are cursed to bear the mark of the betrayers. Effectively, the betrayers are so hated because they betrayed the elven race, the entirety of the race. And for that, they deserve to be punished by the Soldarine, as well as the Dark Soldarine, which is a very interesting situation, seeing as both the who knows? That is a very interesting question. For the fact that the court of elven gods and the dark elven gods both hate the betrayers. So interesting. Apparently, these descendants bear a mark to show that they are cursed by the gods. Shinofane doesn't know this descendant, doesn't know who this descendant is, but I don't know. For some reason, Emma seemed to be extremely nervous and looked a little pale. So one of our ideas for progression on with our journey would be to go and find the lycanthrope before heading towards the Dwarven Citadel. However, the lycanthrope are particularly rowdy in the spring, even not during a full moon. So the elves generally avoid them at this point. Shinofane then proceeds to talk to us a bit more about the cult. And spoke to the commanders of Silvery Moon, and seemed to point out there were three overall groups of the cultists: ones that controlled devils, one that controlled horrible monstrosities, and a group that appeared to raise the dead. After sort of a brief lull in the conversation, Finn decides to step up and presents the cube to Shinofane as something that he's been very curious about, and it's something that he was informed that these elves would have or be more well versed in the writings and the runes and the scrawlings upon the surface of the cube. Shinofane takes a look at the cube and then proceeds to say that they are ancient letters that were once studied here. Her grandmother showed them to her. The engraving seemed disordered, almost as if it's some code and there is potential for them to be ordered. However, Shinofane does say that none of her people are versed in this language. This is an ancient tradition that hasn't really been kept, and even her grandmother was an ancient being, so this text could be from very, very long ago. She does, however, point us in the direction of a potential helper, an entity that lives in the forest somewhere. The elves know approximately where, but not a pinpoint location. Due to elven law, they've never entered that portion of the forest. The being or entity seems to be incredibly ancient and born way before even the time of her grandmother, who only came in contact with that entity after about 300 years. They've lost all records of this being, so they have begun to refer to them as the Ageless, and they can be found at the center of the Brown Forest potentially. We then proceeded to take some downtime where we started to work on some of our downtime activities. And for Finn, at least, I was able to complete a very, very big milestone. I was
Those
able to.
fucking rules, man. That night, the rules were on your sides.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Finn somehow seemed to tap into something when he was staring at the gauntlets.